Well, good afternoon, everybody. We are here to talk about the third quarter read of the Fireside Book Club. This is something we do every quarter. The three of us, plus sometimes Matt, we do a read along together with the Fireside. We have people read along with us. And this month we read The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell. And this is a work of science fiction that is a first contact story. And it's a story that has interwoven in there a lot of things with faith. And there's very interesting alien life in this one, in this kind of maybe somewhat near future type of science fiction story. But one thing that we added, this was Johanna's idea, and I liked it, is we have hidden our thoughts. We have not told anybody anywhere what we thought about it, even before we started the live stream. We didn't say whether we liked it or not. So we're going to reveal that, and then we're going to each talk about our thoughts. This will start spoiler free, and then we will go into spoilers. So something we're going to do, we're going to reveal at the same time. So Johanna has signs, but like I have t-shirts. So like if I hold up my green t-shirt, that means I really liked it. Green for go. Yellow if I was in between, and then red if I didn't like it. So are we ready to reveal whether we liked it, didn't like it, or we're in between? All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Oh, wow. Look at that.
Am I backwards? By the way, I'm so sorry if I'm in the mirror view. I don't know how to flip that.
You're in the, in the right order.
No, it looks right.
Oh, it looks right. Okay, cool. It looks backwards from my view. So
well, this is cool. We have a thumbs up, a thumbs down, and a thumb sideways. So this will prove interesting. So well, let's just work around. I'll go last since I'm hosting. So Evie, do you want to start? You held up the red sign.
So I actually DNF this book.
Woo! Wow.
Yeah, so to be fair, I part of it, the majority of it is wrong book, wrong time. I had just read Between Two Fires, so I was already coming off of a religious horror book. And the religiosity going into this was just so heavy, and it felt so heavy-handed that I'm like, I am not liking this at all. And I would have rather, I wanted to DNF it as opposed to push myself through it and like hate read it, basically. Because if I come back to this at a different time, I have a chance of liking it. Because John got me the book. He sent it to me. He thought I would like it. And, John doesn't have terrible taste. So, so as of right now, it's just not the book for me. It's not working with my brain, or it wasn't working with my brain, and I DNF'd it.
How far did you get into it?
Probably like less than 100 pages, which I know is like, oh my god, you only read like less than 100 pages and then you DNF'd. I pretty much know my taste. I'm like, I know I'm gonna hate read this if I keep going. So
never a good recipe.
Yeah. But I'm interested to hear you guys' thoughts. Hopefully what you guys talk about is even like, oh, that's interesting. I should give this another try. So,
well, I guess I'm next, and I'm sadly, Evie, I don't think I'm going to be convincing you because I was pretty mixed negative on this book. Okay, I wanted to DNF this book so badly. Like there were times, especially in the first half, I just wanted to throw this book across the wall, like across the room, because I hated the humor in this book. Like I hated it. And it's weird because I heard that there was humor in it, but I didn't realize it was so incessant in the story. I feel like the characters all thought they were so funny and so clever. And I didn't laugh out loud a single time. I just thought it was obnoxious. It drew me absolutely crazy. I couldn't stand it. So for me, it was a matter of the execution of that factor. I couldn't stand. And surprisingly, it wasn't the worst book that I read in the month of June, but I was really negative on it. Like I said, and I don't DNF books if I start them. If I read visually, I do not DNF books. I did immersion read this with the audiobook and the physical copy. But if I just listen to an audiobook, I usually DNF left and right. I did not DNF it though. And I forced myself to keep going. And I'll say that in the second half, I did feel like there's a good story in here. I feel like there is a good story in this book. I didn't feel like the execution quite worked for me, and I feel like the big reveal at the end was a bit telegraphed, and so it worked. It worked for what she was going for, but it didn't blow me away either. I think there's some good elements though. Like I can point to some good things. So I think I'll be able to speak from that end. What style of humor is it? I'm trying to think of how to describe the humor. It's just banter. It's like characters, a lot of sexual, crass, salacious humor, but characters just thinking they're so funny. Like I just remember this one guy's like, as what does he say? He says something like, as tight as like a finger up a baby's butt. Like thinks that's so funny. I'm like, that is not funny. So I didn't think, yeah, that was the biggest negative for me though, was the execution of the humor. Otherwise, like I said, some good ideas in there, and also the religious theme was interesting, especially because I have a family member who has decided they are going to enter Catholic priesthood. And of course, my dad was raised by, well, he went to a school of Jesuit priests. And so I thought that element was interesting. And I'm really curious to talk about that more. All right, Josh, go for it.
So I love this book. I thought this book was fantastic. And it really surprised me because this is a book that, had you told me ahead of time what it was about, because I didn't know what it was about. All I knew is that John had recommended this on my channel at one point. And again, I've like you said, Evie, John has a lot of similar tastes to me. And I thought, oh, this sounds, John's recommending it as one of his most underrated works. Like, I'm just going to buy it. So I picked it up and didn't know anything about it. And I've gotten to the point where I don't read the blurbs anymore because I think that so much they tell you too much about the plot. And I guess I've gotten to a point where I like to discover and read a lot more. So I didn't know anything about this, but had you told me what this book was about, that it's basically a first contact story where kind of the themes of faith are exploited quite a bit in here, and the central protagonist is a Jesuit priest. Like, those kinds of things are not kinds of things that I generally kind of gravitate towards when I read, especially in science fiction, because I just feel like, those are science fiction. I think I want more science than faith in there. So I wasn't really, I wouldn't really gravitate towards a story like this, but I thought it was mostly handled with a little subtlety as far as the themes are concerned. The further it went on, I thought at the beginning it was going to be a little bit heavy, and I was thinking, oh, this thing's not going to work for me. And then I felt that as it got more into the crux of the story, the more that we explored the alien life in here, that I felt that at that point, I really started to enjoy the book. As for the humor, Johanna, I think one aspect of the story that didn't work for me real well, I think, was just characterization in general. I didn't feel that was a strength of hers. This was her first novel, and she's not trained as a novelist. She's an anthropologist. So the parts that were more about anthropology, I thought were really well done, as far as the exploration of the alien life, and kind of the two different alien species, basically, that we get to know on this planet. Like, that aspect of it, all of that was so interesting to me. And I think in many ways, because of the characterization might be a little weaker, it felt to me almost like a throwback. Like, when I read an Asimov, I don't read it for character or prose. I'm, trying to read the, underlying ideas. And that's how I felt with this. I don't know. You said the ending was telegraphed. It wasn't for me. I didn't see it coming.
Really?
I was really shocked by the ending of it. So for me, it landed because I didn't see it coming. Maybe.
I have a friend who said that she didn't see it either. So I don't think you're alone with that. But I'll explain when we get into spoilers how I thought that. I also want to say I actually picked this book up I did see John shout this out on your channel, but actually I picked this book up thanks to our good friend Bridger from the Library Ladder. Not to throw Bridger under the bus, because I love Bridger and his recommendations, but I did find this at a used bookstore after he talked about it on his channel. So I know it's a very beloved book, and I feel like I have a very unpopular opinion here, but I do agree with you about the characterization. Yeah,
but I mean, besides that, I thought the theming was solid, and I thought it was pretty. And again, the juxtaposition of the faith and the science aspects of it, it just made sense. I mean, when you think about, it was funny because it made me chuckle because the afterword, at least in the version that Evie and I have, it has like a chapter called Jesuits in Space, which is kind of tongue in cheek, but it's, where she talks about, I mean, I knew a little bit of the history of the Jesuits, at least missionary work. It seemed like they were always, at the forefront of exploration. Like, they were in the East before any other, Westerners seemed to be in the East. And as far as from a religious standpoint, so it would almost, it would kind of make sense that if there is this discovery of an alien, an alien planet, that the Jesuits would kind of be on board based on their history. So I found that highly interesting. And again, I think my enjoyment of this book leaned into, I think, the things that she did well, and I just kind of ignored some of the things that she didn't do so well.
Yeah, I'll say that I think I felt a little differently about the idea that it explored faith. I actually was here for that theme to some degree because it made me think about Hyperion and the priest's tale, and that's my favorite part of the Hyperion story is the priest's tale. So I thought that was a cool thing, and it made sense. And I like that. Yeah, I like that. I think some of the ways that came together, that mission came together, were interesting. Like I don't know how much I buy into it, but
yeah, a lot of it seemed like it was, the selection of some of the characters that went on it. It was pretty convenient.
Very,
that this very small knit group of people also happened to be like the main people that were going on this journey. But then again, it was also, and you could see, I mean, this was written at least 20 years ago, because this is 20th anniversary edition that I have here. You can see kind of the rise of, private space exploration, which is what this is. This wasn't a thing sanctioned by government. So, perhaps that makes it a little more plausible. But yeah, it was a little bit convenient that, the couple that the priest knew really well just happens to go. And then this guy happens to go, and all of that. So it's a, it is a thing that, I think sometimes authors have to do that. But I loved it, but I won't put it up with the priest's tale either. I mean, that's like S tier storytelling.
For real. Yeah.
I'm putting this here so I can write this down real quick, because that is probably right up my alley. And I do remember in Shogun, that was obviously a plot point as well about the Jesuits in Japan. So
that's right. Yeah. Good point.
Cool. Had to write that down. One of the things, we can still talk about this spoiler free. I just jotted down like two things real quick beforehand, is when there's an interview with her in the back of the book, and they asked her what's the primary theme of this book. And her answer, I found this really interesting, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. Even Evie, only having read 100 pages, I think you can chime in on what you heard of this. Her answer to what's the primary theme of the Sparrow is, she says it's the exploration of the risks and beauties of religious faith, which is not what I felt until I thought about it.
No, I agree with that theme. Mm-hmm.
I mean, the risks obviously are a huge part of this story. But the risks and the beauties, I find that's very interesting. I wouldn't have, I mean, I'm not the best theme guy anyway, but if I were to write down the themes, I would have said, religion and science, or I might have picked up on the anthropological things, having not known her background, just because, that was kind of the lens when we got to the world. But I just found that really interesting. The risks and the beauties. I love that kind of juxtaposition that she puts in there.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that theme. Absolutely. I'm actually excited to talk about spoilers, because I think that's the one part of the story that I find interesting. Like I'm more like, when I say I'm mixed about the story, I think that, like I said, there are positives about it. There are things about it like that I was thinking there's some good elements in here, and that specifically I think was done well.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I highlighted two things in the amount that I had read. And one of them was talking about faith. He had also discovered the outermost limit of faith, and in doing so had located the exact boundary of despair. It's from chapter 2, so it's not really a spoiler.
I wrote that down too in my
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So I guess logically, I can understand that, and I can see the correlations of what she's intending, but from a reader perspective, it just, like I said, it felt preachy. If it had been, I don't know if maybe that was her intent to be preachy, but if it had been a lot more subtle and quiet and really conversational in those, explorations and discussions of, the risk and beauties of faith, I probably would have actually been compelled to read it because of that, despite kind of the very slowness of it, which that's actually another thing of why I DNF'd it. I'm like, this is going so slow. What is going on? Like, grip me with something. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do think that aspect did get better throughout the book. I think it was a little more subtle. It's also interesting, just the interview that's in my edition with her is she stopped being Catholic at like age 15. So she abandoned her faith very early. And I find that very fascinating that someone who would abandon their faith would make an exploration of faith such an important part of a book, especially their first book. I found that part of it fascinating. So maybe he was overcompensating at the beginning.
Yeah, I was going to say that
anymore.
That's surprising to me, because I would have expected her to be like, as of writing it, very active in, the organization, which, I mean, to be fair, religion and faith are two different things with an overlap.
True.
Overlap, but yeah. I'm actually surprised hearing that.
I think we could explain that a lot more in the spoiler section, how she handled that. But I guess one other thing to mention, spoiler free, is that this story takes place in 2 timelines. So it takes place in 2019, which is the future from when she wrote it, right? Because she wrote this in what was it, 96? Or it was published in 96. And then so it takes place in 2019 and 2060. Going back and forth between those 2 timelines. And that was an interesting choice.
Yeah, it was. And I definitely want to talk about that in the spoiler section, because I think it had some mixed results. There were parts of it I thought worked, but anyway, we can talk about that more. Any other spoiler free things, so we can start kind of digging in a little bit?
That's a good question. Other spoiler free things that we could say.
So I know that there's a sequel to this.
Yeah.
Do you think this book stands well on its own?
Yes.
Okay.
And I do. It seems a lot of people, just that I've seen comments about this book, most people say not to read the second book. And again, the interview I read, she was writing it at the time, and she was very nervous because it was, had kind of a modern classic, and she was scared about revisiting it and following up with, a character's continued journey. But yeah, there is a sequel. I'm not going to read it. I really enjoyed this one. I don't feel I need to, continue.
I'm definitely not continuing.
Yeah.
I was pretty, like I said, I think the second half was for me better than the first half, because the humor relented a little bit, but it still didn't. I mean, like I said, I could pick apart some good things in there, but I was so ready to be done with it at the same time. I was like, I'm ready to be done with this book. So yeah, it just wasn't quite for me. It didn't quite hit for me. So.
All right, well, let's go to spoilers. I'll put up this banner. So you've been warned if you haven't read The Sparrow, and maybe I've convinced you to read it. The other 2 may not have, but if you do want to read it and you don't want spoiled, have a great day, and stop by and see the rest of the chat when you're done with it. But I think one thing, just to start with spoilers, let's talk about the plotting a little bit.
Sure.
Because we do have these twin timelines, and we see that that our main character, the priest, is broken in the second timeline, and you're trying to wonder what happened with him, and he starts to feed those breadcrumbs throughout. I thought, in addition to just the book getting better, I felt the second half, the pacing was better because it wasn't as disjunct. And I get it, because I think writing a kind of a dual timeline story is tough, because you have to introduce characters on both timelines, and you have to make it kind of enough that you're compelled. And I did have a little bit of struggle in the first like 100 pages because it was bouncing back and forth so much. But I think once it was established and she was able to stick into each timeline longer, I felt that corresponded exactly when I started to enjoy the book a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I do think you're onto something about that. Like uh, it does build as it takes its time in the first half as we're establishing relationships and establishing the whole mission. So I feel like the story does go all the way back to when Emilio meets all this found family that goes with him on this expedition, and then from there we end up getting to the point in which we start out in the second timeline at the very beginning. So yeah, no, I agree with that. Don't know if I have much to add to the plot, but
But I thought that was, I mean, that was one of the many things I thought that got better. And this being a debut novel, I mean, maybe that's just, you know, learning as you go. And, you know, I mean, who knows today's, you know, publishing. I mean, granted, this is 30 years ago. How much an editor really does. Because it seems like I always used to think editors were really, contributed a lot to a lot of stories, but it seems like that's not always the case. So part of this might have been on the job training with her, just learning kind of how to start this story and get it going.
yeah, yeah,
Because yeah, that was part of it. But you know, you mentioned family. I did find it interesting. I was thinking about the different, you know, main characters here, and it seemed like they were all, except for the found family, well, and except for the couple, they didn't, none of them had a family. Like none of them had anything. You know, you had a priest who's, you know, he's a priest, so he doesn't, you know, have a traditional family anymore. You get the I forgot her name already. I'm horrible with character names. The kind of the intellectual prostitute where she was, you know, doing good deeds and making money. Like she had no family.
I forgot her name too.
Yeah,
Man,
the couple had the family, but they were a childless family, and it just seemed like every character, you know, there were no traditional family units here until they kind of found one another in this story.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
I should
Jimmy,
jot down character names when I read books because I'm like after I've read the book, I forget character names like
is
so.
it Sophia? Is that the
Sophia,
girl's
yeah.
name? Okay, yeah. So Sophia definitely did not have a family.
Mhm.
Jimmy had a strained relationship with his mother to some
With his
degree, I
mother,
got the
yeah.
impression, though he did have a mother. And then, like, yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that made it so it actually served a couple of purposes in a way. It served so that I think that the question of going out on this space expedition wasn't quite as big a decision for them because, you know, what are we leaving behind? But
Yeah.
then the second matter of it was uh, that once they are on that other planet, they have to consider uh, the possibility, like when Sophia and that other guy screw up, so Evie, what happens is they get to the planet, they start to establish a connection with a certain race of aliens there called the oh my goodness, I'm
The
forgetting.
Ruan, or
Oh
there were
gosh.
two of them. Yeah.
Yeah, there were 2 of them. I'm thinking of the first one. There's this benign species there that they come across who is very gentle and kind and curious, and this species they get along with really well, but at a certain point they find them kind of boring, which is interesting. But this one, there's a Jana Ata and the Runa. Is it Runa?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the Runa. So the Runa species are very kind, very loving and affectionate and tender. And this is so when it comes to, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I'm so sorry. Well, let me finish the point I was going to make actually. So when they get there, they find out at a certain point that they have screwed up in terms of their capsule to get back on the ship, like getting enough fuel to get back to Earth. And as a result, they realize they might have to stay on this planet for the rest of their lives. And so, in a way, becoming this found family makes it all the more realistic to them. Like they're able to adapt this idea of, like, okay, this is the last of my humankind family. Like, this is what I have left and what I have to connect to. So I think it served that purpose as well. So I'll just finish with that point and we can go on from there too.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and I think that's one aspect. I like that. I'm not huge on like hard science, and this was not hard science, but I do like that it gave you very clearly the concept of when you're faster than light speed, you're traveling at a different pace. Your I forget the term, but your conception of time passes at a different speed than ours, so that they knew that basically when they came back, like most of the people they knew would be dead. If they got back, because they would be traveling. I guess it's theory of relativity, I think, is broiled in there, but it didn't give it the high science treatment, which I like. And I think so many times, like space exploration is not portrayed that way in science fiction, at least in the things I've read. Like I know the Forever War did a really good job of this, just talking about the temporal aspects of time where you're perceiving it differently. Because when Emilio gets back in 2060 or whatever, he's just a couple years older, but like 40 years have passed on Earth. So I think that side of it. Certainly time debt. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That side of it certainly I thought was portrayed pretty well. And I think you're right, because of these characters were unconnected except for the couple that went. It did make it again, maybe it was a convenience to make it easier for all of those characters to travel. Of course, the Jesuits, they'll do it because that's their calling and that's what they do. But the other characters, I guess, that's a different situation.
Right. And I will go backwards a little bit from here, because the quote that you quoted, Evie, like I said, I also wrote that down. And I think that this is, to me, why it was so highly telegraphed that the ending would be as terrible as it is. And that is because it says here, following what you read, it says, it was at the moment that he learned truly to fear God. And at that moment, I'm like, oh, wow, God is to be feared. Why is God to be feared? Whereas all the other Jesuits, they're under this impression that he's having a crisis of faith because he betrayed God. And I'm like, I knew, I was like, no, he didn't betray God. He feels God betrayed him, or God showed himself to be something to be feared. And so obviously he discovered something really bad on this planet that shows the darkest side of God possible. And obviously he's scarred. He has migraines. He has PTSD. He has
Hands and
scarred
stuff.
hands. Yeah. So I just wanted to add that, and we'll get there. But basically, what happens on this planet is that they come across that species, like we were talking about, the Runa, and then after everything seems great and peaceful, what happens to Emilio as a result of that is, like, throughout the journey of the book, you get the sense of how he became a Jesuit, that he comes from a very troubled past, and it was maybe the only possibility he thought he saw for having some sort of meaningful existence. It seemed very existential to me, the reasons why he joined the faith, which is interesting because I always thought the Jesuits had to be so devout, that they had to feel this really strong, real calling from God. And I mean, I think every priest has to feel that, but it seemed like his arrival at that decision was still not as intimate as other people. Like, he doesn't feel like he has had the voice of God talk to him. He hasn't felt like he had this that has this strong personal connection to God. And I think there is some nuance in how that's described at times. But what happens for him is when he gets to the planet and he meets this species who are so kind and gentle and loving, and he's able to, because of his facility with language, communicate with them and build a bridge to understand one another, to be able to communicate. It's like he has this incredible spiritual revelation of, like, this is my calling, this is the most beautiful thing in the world, and, like, hallelujah, like, this is the most blissful possible experience he could have because of this experience. So I just want to make that clear, that that's really important to the faith part of his journey, from going from maybe a troubled past, existential commitment, to feeling all one with God. Like there's even a line that talks about that, like feeling he's discovered God. This is the beauty of God. So speaking to that theme you were talking about, Josh.
Yeah, and I think it's just so fascinating that you gave this character this supreme command of languages, which in itself I found fascinating because I'm sure there's people like that, people that can, pick up languages really, really easily. And when it was interesting the way that the author broke that down at times when he was explaining how things worked, I found all of that fascinating. So I don't know if that's linguistics or if linguistics in any ways is a branch of anthropology in some way that, she knew all of that, but I found all of that interesting. And then, but like what you're talking about, the scenes where he's communicating with this first alien race, and from the eyes of the others, like one of the other Jesuits writes back to Earth saying, like he is a saint, that we need to, elevate him to sainthood from what I'm seeing here. But what I found interesting was after that, when you start to really learn who they've interacted with, because for so long, there's time jumps in here, for so long, they're trying to discover deeper things. Like for him, he's trying to discover, their faith. He's trying to discover those sorts of things. And you start to realize that this sentient species either isn't super intelligent, or they're just very underdeveloped. And that's when you find out about this other sentient species, which changes the entire story. That's something I really liked about this book too. I wish I remembered, I read a science fiction book a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago, at least 15 years ago, that was a story about like modern day story where one of the other offshoots of Homo sapiens like survived, and they were kind of like clairvoyant. And I just found it so fascinating because, like evolution, certain species kind of die out, certain species thrive. So I found it very interesting in this story how we got two sentient species on this planet, and we got to really know the first one, and then we get to know the second one. We find out they're very, very different, and that the first ones, the Runa, they're kind of like serfs. They're kind of like indentured servants for the second ones. And so that part, I really enjoyed that aspect of it, because I thought that was just a really interesting concept that I really, except the one science fiction story I could think about, I hadn't really seen this anywhere. So like anytime I'm reading and I see something new, it's something that if I like the idea, I love the idea. If it's something new for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess we can go ahead and reveal, since Evie hasn't read it. This is actually serving the discussion in a way, because then we're kind of forced to talk through.
Do a recap.
Yeah. So basically, this other species that they discover, the Jana Ata, I think is what they're called. That might be slightly off, but they discover there's another species that is, I guess, up the hierarchy, if you will, on this planet, and that they use the Runa species basically like cattle, that they end up picking them at times, and like farming them or eating them. And so they get a pretty uncomfortable confrontation with that. There's a little more to it than that, but did you want to add anything about the Jana Ata species, Josh?
One thing I found very interesting was something that when the humans discovered it and they started talking about it, some were horrified, but then Emilio was able to say, no, this is just what they've done with is basically they had a form of population control with not just the Runa, but with them as well. I mean, they were only allowed to, produce children if they were, a certain level and things like that. And because the one thing they notice when they first go to the city is the first thing they notice is they're going through the city and there's no poverty. There's no homelessness. There's no anything like that. And then they find out why. And they find out because they basically cull the population or control the population. And it's one of those, the humans are horrified by it. But Emilio's saying, well, is it worse to have, too many people that we cannot feed, that we cannot clothe, that we cannot house. And so I found that little just reveal of this new species very interesting, even though from our perspective, it's kind of a dark and an evil thing. You know, I thought she was able to kind of give you both sides of that kind of issue.
I feel like that's very anti-Catholic too, to say, oh, well, you know, maybe it's for the best that we cull the species. That's so not Catholic.
Yeah, yeah.
In its viewpoint. But yeah, so yeah, exactly. So they find this way to cull the species, as Josh said. And what and the other thing we should probably mention is that gender works completely flipped when it comes to, I think it was just the Runa, right? Where the
Yeah.
genders were flipped. So even the Runa, they mistook all the male characters for female characters, and so it's like the females are the ones who are more of the protectors, and yeah, it's just like a very flipped gender dynamic. And that was interesting. And then the big oh, sorry, did you have a Gloria to say something?
No, I was just gonna say after you were done that as you guys are talking, you know, this obviously seems like a more sociological, cultural anthropology type look at these species, both of these species, and it's just reminding me of Shroud by Adrian Tchaikovsky.
Oh, interesting. I was thinking more Le Guin, but yeah, I haven't read
Which
as
I
much.
know Tchaikovsky is inspired by Le Guin. So
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
you know, but yeah, so Shroud is like basically a anthropological look at aliens and really who are the aliens? Is it are the humans aliens? Are the aliens aliens? Like, it's really interesting. That's all that I was thinking of as you guys are talking. I'm like, wonder if Adrian Tchaikovsky read The Sparrow and took some inspiration there.
Am I incorrect in saying that Steven Erikson's an anthropologist?
I think he is, isn't he?
Yeah, archaeologist, anthropologist. Yeah.
Maybe.
One of the eight.
Archaeologist. I knew he was an archaeologist.
Okay, I thought he was an anthropologist for some reason. I mean, both fields are fascinating.
Gosh,
but,
I don't know. Now I'm like,
yeah, I'm not sure either. It just
now I want to look
in my head
because
that would make we gotta I mean that would make sense because like his in Malaz and how well he's able to develop the different cultures and make them seem so distinct. So I mean that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. I want to say he's both though. Maybe I should look that up. I don't know. But yeah. There's definitely quite a bit, I think, of thought put into that. And what additionally can be a scientific element that's brought into the story is that the humans, of course, brought seeds. And they brought seeds. This is part of the tragedy, is that they brought these seeds as like a peace offering, as something they could contribute. And unfortunately, this doesn't go well. What ends up happening, if I recall correctly, and it's been over a month now since I've read the book, so please correct me. But what ends up happening is that as they feed the Runa species, it causes them to go into a fertility cycle, into estrus. And so they end up populating too much, and this causes a mass butchery episode with the Janata coming through. Yeah, take it, Josh. What else?
Yeah, and along the lines with that is also realizing the Runa, just through their interactions with the humans, realize that yes, they're subjugated, but they're also there's more of them, and that starts to scare the Janawata, or however you say it. So that's another reason for them to, continue kind of the butchery, the domestication of this other species. But it's in that butchery that several of our characters get killed because they see them coming in and they're killing children and they try to get in the way and they're just butchered right alongside them. That's kind of the beginning of the end of the story. And there's some very horrific things after that. The last 50 pages of this was brutal. I mean, just total brutality at the end of this book, which I guess, looking back, some of it was, like you said, Johanna, you kind of saw it coming. Like some of it was broadcast, but some of it I didn't see coming. And then I like realized like just beforehand, like what was going to happen. So it wasn't like a big surprise. Like when he kills, when he's in the cell and he's in the cell forever and he just decides he's going to attack whoever opens the door next. And then he unfortunately kills the one Runa child that was his, you know, I don't know what connection you'd call them, but and then I remember back that he had mentioned that he killed her like way early in the book.
Yeah.
So that I guess was I guess some of the breadcrumbs were laid, but what happened to Emilio, I didn't think was it still shocked me when I found out.
Yeah, I want to go ahead and add one thing too, is that so Emilio and I think one other priest, was it Mark? I can't remember. There was he and one other priest get taken prisoner while everybody else gets butchered. So the old married couple, Sophia, Jimmy, all of them are dead. And so it's one thing to endure that form of shock. And as they're taking him prisoner, he's trying so hard to refuse food because the food that they offer them is that of the Runa. It's that's what they eat. So that's the meat that they're offering him. And yeah, and so that there's that tragedy. And then when the thing is, like at the beginning, they do make it clear that his crimes are that he ends up killing the one child that he was very bonded to, who looked up to him, who had this special connection to him, who yeah, and so he's accused of that crime. He's additionally accused of the crime of being in a brothel, and I think there might have been another crime involved as well. And so, like I said, I already knew him. I had in my head, I'm like, he's the victim, but how is he the victim? And how, because I could see the priests were seeing it one way and that this is not correct. And then what we find out is that when he's taken prisoner, and this was clever, and I didn't catch this until the end, but he's taken prisoner and he's thrown into this cell and he gets sodomized and beaten, and it's I want to say it's like connected to the musician who ends up, who's the one who's broadcasted the music that brought them to the planet in the first place. So they originally find out about this other life because there are music signals that come through that Jimmy hears. And when he hears the music signals, they're like, oh, it's like music of the spheres. It's this beautiful, harmonious connection that we're going to have with another species. And so at the end, the tragedy of that is that that's the music. The music is playing, and the music not only is playing while he's being sodomized and beaten and demeaned after the tragedy of losing his found family, but the music is mocking him at the same time. It's mocking him as he's getting abused. So it's yeah, I mean, it's pretty bad. Like I thought, okay, it delivered on how bad it reported to be at the very beginning. And so again, this going and the crisis of faith going on from there is that his issue is that he has to believe in God. Oh man, I wrote this down and now I don't have my journal in front of me, but the idea is that if he believes in God, he has to believe it. There's this crisis between believing in God and then fearing God versus being an atheist and fearing himself. I remember there was some kind of split like that in his faith at the end, but maybe you remember better than I do. It's been a while.
Yeah, I don't remember that exact argument there, but for me, the powerful part was, you know, we in the later timeline, we see this broken character that's struggling PTSD. He doesn't want to talk to anybody, and he doesn't want to, you know, deal with what had happened. Doesn't even want to say what had happened, and he's accused of these crimes that he was, you know, that he was voluntarily in this brothel and all of this. And then when you get to the big reveal where he finally breaks down and says, I was raped. When he gets to that moment, you realize that the Father Superior, whatever, knew this all along and just kind of had to break him back down for him to realize and to accept that he was a victim. And I guess part of the trial of faith is, you know, why would a just God allow something like this? And if there, you know, if there is a God, why would he or she let us go through this? So I liked the second half character journey of Emilio as he finally, you know, confronted that. And then you could almost see after that scene how just kind of that singular moment of him admitting how he had been victimized, how he changed after that, and he was able to, you know, not just break down and you know, want to be sleeping all the time and staying away and not talking to everybody, that he could actually start to heal from what he went through. And all of that kind of came, I mean, you look back and it kind of makes sense, but it still came as a bit of a surprise to me, just the way that unfolded. I think the one thing that was also, just thinking about this parallel with this, a lot of times when we have religion in fiction, especially in like science fiction, it always seems like the religious folks are either the good guys or they're demonized. And I didn't feel that, you know, she picked a side here, because like the way that they treated him, some of them, the priests trying to get to the bottom of this, were horrible. And then you realize some of them were just totally empathetic towards what had happened, and especially the one that knew what was happening and was just trying to get him to get to a point where he could start to heal. So I did like that aspect of it, because I think a lot of times religion in fiction is portrayed very black and white, and I think she did a good job at kind of giving you both black and white in this story.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing, and I'm going to leave here in a second so I can go get my journal in the other room and find what I was talking about, because I feel so bad that I don't have that quote in front of me. But I also add, though, that I think that the other thing that she does when it comes to the priest's journey is that she gives you, in the future timeline, in the 2060 timeline, he's interacting with a few other priests, and he's learning about what brings them to the priesthood, and how, like, for example, one guy becomes a priest because his wife tragically dies in a car accident he is responsible for. He's sick. He needs to get a tissue. He reaches into the glove compartment, loses control of the car crashes, his wife dies, and then he decides to become a priest. And then additionally, it talks about the people who come into the priesthood never having had sex before. And so there's a lot of not a lot, but there is discussion in this book about celibacy and how priests, and then it's kind of silly, but it's like how priests take care of it. And this whole kind of joke about, well, it's because we have hands. And then at the end, he doesn't have functional hands. I'll be right back.
Yeah, Evie, he's tortured. When he's tortured, they disfigure his hands.
Yeah, that we see at the start, like he's all like, he has to wear the special gloves or whatever,
Yeah,
or someone develops the special gloves for him. So I thought that was interesting.
and it's he doesn't realize at the time that he's going to be tortured, because the two species speak different languages. So he really only has one character that he can talk to, because he's learned the Runa language. So he can only talk to this one character who understands this language, who ends up turning out to be, you know, the kind of a primary villain here. So because of that, he doesn't even realize what's happening to him when he's kind of taken to this capital city and all of this.
Okay, I found it. I got it right. It sounds like
That's
I got
your
it right.
quote?
In the
Okay.
first place. Yeah, which is that, you know, he needs to believe in God, but if he does believe in God, then the cost is terrifying, because it's that idea of like a God that would do such a horrible thing. And but if he becomes an atheist, he blames himself. So I don't know. Interesting. I thought it was also interesting, though, too, because there's a quote earlier in the book that talks about, like, when the priests are talking with him. Yeah, it says, like, there's a priest who is in a conversation with him, and I don't know exactly what scene this is. There's no form of death or violence that Jesuit missionaries have not met. Jesuits have been hanged, drawn, and quartered in London, disemboweled in Ethiopia, burned alive, poisoned, crucified, starved to death, beheaded, drowned. And it goes into all these places. I'm not going to go through all that. We have been terrorized and intimidated. We have been reviled, falsely accused, imprisoned for life. We have been beaten, maimed, sodomized, tortured, and broken. So I thought that was interesting because that's, I think, at the trial, or no, maybe it's just with the general, the Jesuit general. So he's going through the list of all the horrible things that Jesuits have gone in the past. And I mean, if you look at Catholic history, the history with the martyrs is grueling. It's awful. So I don't know. I don't know that the point she made in this book, it was bad. I'm not denying it's like as bad as you could possibly get. But is it worse than some of the real accounts that have happened historically? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, you could almost even consider, the Jesuits when they go to the Far East, that's almost like first contact, totally different cultures and things like that. So
Yeah.
I think, this is just another kind of similar story of perhaps, and maybe that's why she, included the Jesuits, because that's historically something that's been part of their order. But I don't know in necessarily 2026 if that's still the case or not. But I do know that like one aspect that really hit me really close is when they decided to fund the mission. It was like this. And, I was at the Vatican museums in March, and like, there's a lot of money there. So they could easily sell a couple paintings and go to space in a minute. So, that felt real, very real to me.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. I did like that description of what the Vatican is like in 2060, because there's, like you said, there's just so much history there. I've never been myself, but that's pretty cool. You were just there, by the way. So
yeah, it was. Although the wealth made me a little angry because you realize like how much good they could do if they sold a lot of the art, but that's another discussion.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. So yeah, like I said, I don't know that I mean, it certainly does explore the theme that she was describing. Given like I said, I think you get that arc with the existential beginning of his faith journey, the moment when he feels like he's fully realized God and his purpose, and then to the end where he's between trying to decide which is worse, being an atheist or believing God is real. So I think that was done. That was, I mean, she achieved what she was going for.
I think it's interesting that you kind of give you've drawn these two options, and it does seem very black and white options.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a third somewhere in the middle there that,
Exactly. Yeah. I would think, I mean, I'm no longer Catholic either, but I'm certain that a Catholic would come up with a third. I'm certain. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they would not say, oh, this is because God wants you to fear him. And it's not because, you should blame yourself and be an atheist. There's a whole other middle section. And it's probably shrouded in mystery. It's probably like we can't fully understand what God's agenda is, but he loves you. And, could be just further evidence of his love that you're here. And I don't know. There's something they would say as a creative third. That's a really good point.
Yeah, but I think it was a good depiction just because of the trauma of his crisis of faith at the end. And it seemed very real to me. Where a lot of again, we talked to the very beginning, how maybe the characterization wasn't super strong in this book. I thought at least the internal aspect of Emilio was handled pretty well, as far as the things that he had to confront at the very end. One other thing I do want to talk about is Sophia. Was that her name?
Yes, Sophia.
So very interesting, because apparently this is kind of a thing where very rich persons will find like intelligent children in poverty, put them through school, and reap the benefits of their education. Like, I thought this was a total fabrication, but apparently this is something that actually goes on. Had you heard of Have you heard of this, or am I just in the dark about this?
I've heard stories of that, yeah.
Which I find just fascinating, and which for her, she was fine with it because it wasn't sexual prostitution, it's intellectual prostitution where she's trained to do all these things. But she has basically this, I mean, for lack of a better term, a pimp who gives her jobs to do, and they get most of the money, she gets some of the money, but it brought her out of poverty. I found that aspect of that character just very interesting. The character itself was fine. I didn't really have a deep connection to the character or anything, but the idea of the character I thought was like something I'd never seen before. And then like you do a couple Google searches and you realize like, oh yeah, this actually happens, which kind of blew my mind a little bit.
I don't know if I am remembering this correctly, but I seem to remember that we find out much worse has happened to her in her past as well.
Well,
Like,
yeah, she was
sexually trafficked. Is that the idea?
Yeah, she was originally, and then somebody that purchased her for potentially the sexual purposes, found out she was intelligent, and then just realized that she could be so much more and could make money for them. And I just found that just so interesting.
Yeah, I think that's like, and maybe that was her situation in which indentured servitude. Yeah. Maybe it was a situation of I'd way rather be intellectual property than being sexually trafficked or whatever. So
well, and I think she did say that at one point where it was a better option for her. But like the older couple, they were horrified about it, and then they eventually are the ones that were able to kind of buy her freedom. But I just found that very interesting because that's something like I hadn't seen before. And then you find out like, it's kind of a thing.
Yeah. I didn't realize that either, honestly. So interesting. Yeah. I don't know if I have anything to add to that. She became such a strong love interest in the story. You got the impression that she was a source of temptation for Emilio, and there was a hovering question throughout the story of whether he was going to break his vows to be with her, or if there was going to be some kind of love triangle that emerged between him and Jimmy or whatever.
I thought her marriage came out of nowhere because I thought that she was really in love with Emilio, even though they couldn't love one another. And then all of a sudden, oh, she's married. Oh, she's pregnant. Okay, here we go. That kind of came out of nowhere for me.
Yeah, it did feel like it very rushed, that whole section. Agreed.
I think in general, the time jumps didn't bother me though, except maybe that one. I think the time jumps kept things moving forward and kept it realistic. I think sometimes in stories like this, you learn too much too fast and it doesn't seem real. But when you find out, oh, they've been here 2 years living above the Runa, and you find out that all the things they've learned, it makes a lot of sense.
Another book that does the dual timeline that I love is The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin.
Yeah, I need to read that.
I don't know if you'll like it. I'll be honest, like I feel like I have a special love of that book. DV, have you read that one? I can't remember.
I have. It's not my favorite Le Guin, but I see why people despise it, and I see why people adore it.
Basically, just like Jared Henderson, maybe Pete.
Yeah, I really like it. It's one of probably the most
I love it.
Intellectually stimulating books I've ever read.
Yeah, I was surprised how much it got me emotionally too. So I don't know. I feel like I'm alone on the hill. I think, like I said, just like Jared Henderson and me, we're just like the only dispossessed stands. But otherwise, I feel like most people don't love it. But yes, it does a dual timeline in a different way. It doesn't dual timeline to meet in the middle the way this one does. But at the same time, I love the way that she handled that structure. Banks' use of weapons. I keep hearing so much about the Culture series. It was going to be my choice for the book club pick at one point, but then I changed my mind. Whatever.
But we have many more quarters to continue.
That's true. That's true.
By the way, did we say whose book The Sparrow was?
Oh, we didn't. Go ahead. Whose was it?
Was it me? It was me. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think we ever made that clear. So
It was my pick. So sorry, but I loved it. So hey.
I ended up reading both my pick and your pick that month. I read Where Late the Sweet Birds Sang, which was a 1976 award-winning book, I think, in science fiction, and it has to do with cloning, and it's post-apocalyptic, standalone. And so, yeah. I'm glad though that this won because obviously Where Late the Sweet Bird Sang, that was on my science fiction TBR. This book almost made it onto my science fiction TBR video because I had it on the shelf. But I was like, I already have that 10. I probably shouldn't add another one. But it worked out because I actually own the book. So yeah. And then Evie, you chose the Gollum.
Gollum and the Genie, which
Genie.
I am reading right now. So
do you like it?
So far, yeah. I'm really liking it. It's very, the way that I've described it in the one message that I pretty much have sent about it is it's very magical writing, not in like a fantastic sense, but in more of a wondrous sense of it. And Helene Wecker is really balancing the historical with the fantastical really well. So
nice. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's always nice to add science fiction into. Is that science fiction? Actually, maybe I should ask.
It's. I think it's in the literary fiction section, but it's really fantasy.
Oh, okay, fantasy.
Yeah, it's historical fantasy. Yeah.
What's interesting is I found this in the literary section of a used bookstore. It wasn't in the science fiction fantasy section neither. So cool.
I think that all depends on who's filing them.
Yeah. Probably, yeah.
Because I often see like Ishiguro, I've seen in both. He seems to be more in the literary side.
Probably more literary, yeah.
But sorry, Claire and the Sun, science fiction.
It is 100% science fiction. Have you read it?
That's the only one I've read. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know you read it. Oh.
I read it when it came out. Yeah.
Oh,
so
cool.
like way before everybody else. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Definitely science fiction. Yes.
For sure. Well, any final thoughts on the Sparrow? Evie, did we convince you to ever pick it up again?
I mean, honestly, yeah, I think so. It's just one that I'm probably gonna have to reset my expectations. I mean, obviously now I know it's very slow moving, having started it, so I'm just gonna have to meet the book where it needs to be met. Like my expectations were like, oh, it's a science fiction. It's gonna be like not fast paced, but I did not expect how slow the introduction and the build up to the I guess the plot was going to be. So now that I've reset my expectations, we've discussed it, I know what to expect. I'm hoping I will enjoy it. So
maybe you'll get along with the humor more than I do.
Yeah, maybe.
See, I just glossed straight through the humor. It didn't really. I guess it didn't bother me enough that I didn't laugh out loud at any point either. So
yeah. It was just one of those things. I didn't think it would bother me as much because I was like, well, maybe it won't land for me, but maybe I'll really enjoy the story. And I was surprised how much it just clashed. It was like a tonal clash for me personally. But yeah, like I said, good things in the story as well. I don't know.
And I guess I'll just reiterate, just again, based on what I'm hearing from Josh and Johanna, how they're describing the totality of this book. Go read Shroud by Adrian Tchaikovsky.
There you go.
Yeah. I wrote it down too. So yeah, I mean, I loved, the things I loved, I think, Johanna, you appreciated.
Yeah, I appreciate
most of this book, like the anthropological side of things, the scientific side of things, even if there were, even though I really liked the book, I admit there are the flaws in there, but I certainly enjoyed my time with it.
Cool. Nice. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all in the chat that came and hung out. I know this was early. Normally we give like the whole month to read it, but we had just scheduling issues with all of us and a lot of travel and all of that. So thank you for hanging out. If you're here on Team Replay, drop us a comment below and then just stay tuned. We will do another fireside read. We'll put up a poll I guess we'll put up a poll in September to read together something in October. So you can come and vote on the Fireside Book Club, and we'd love to talk with you about whatever we read in October. So thank you, Evie and Johanna. This was a great chat. Thank you again for the chat, and everybody have a good rest of your afternoon.
Bye. Thank you.